The train whistle pierced the silence of the Montana prairie as Winifred Edwards clutched her worn leather suitcase with trembling hands. The year was 1879, and after 3 months of correspondence with a man she'd never met, she was about to become a bride in Silver Creek, a frontier town she knew nothing about except what her future husband had described in his letters that had promised her a comfortable home, stability, and perhaps, eventually, love. The journey from Boston had been exhausting, 5 days of lurching train cars, questionable food, and sleepless nights. Winifred's plain blue traveling dress, once crisp and proper, now hung limply on her slender frame. She smoothed down her skirts nervously as the train slowed, belching black smoke that temporarily obscured her view of the small wooden platform that constituted Silver Creek Station. Silver Creek Station, the conductor called out, moving through the car. Winifred's heart hammered in her chest. This was it. There was no turning back now. After the death of her parents to influenza last winter, leaving her with nothing but debts and a meager teaching position that barely covered room and board, becoming a mail-order bride had seemed her only option. Her future husband, Frederick Sullivan, had seemed kind enough in his letters, a successful merchant who owned a general store in town and needed a wife to help with the business and provide him companionship. The train jerked to a complete stop, steam hissing from beneath the cars. Winifred gathered her courage along with her satchel and carefully made her way down the narrow steps onto the platform. The late afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, immediately causing beads of sweat to form on her brow. She squinted, scanning the small crowd for the man whose daguerreotype she carried in her purse, a stern-looking gentleman with a full beard and spectacles. Instead, a tall man with a face weathered by sun and hardship approached her, a hungry smile spreading across his face. He wore expensive clothing, but there was something unsettling about him, something that made Winifred's instincts flare in warning. "Miss Edwards," he inquired, tipping his hat, "I'm here to collect you." Winifred hesitated, her hand tightening on her satchel. "And you are?" "Beauregard Wilson," he said, reaching for her bag. "I'm an associate of Mr. Sullivan's. He sent me to fetch you as he's indisposed today." Something about his explanation seemed wrong. Frederick's letters had emphasized how eagerly he anticipated meeting her train. She stepped back slightly, maintaining her grip on her bag. "That's strange. Mr. Sullivan was quite adamant about meeting me personally." Wilson's smile tightened. "Plans change, Miss Edwards. He's a busy man. Now if you'll just come with me, I have a wagon waiting." As Wilson reached for her arm, a deep voice cut through the tension like a knife. "She's spoken for." Both Winifred and Wilson turned to see a man striding purposefully toward them. Tall and broad-shouldered, he moved with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to demanding respect. Unlike Wilson's flashy attire, this stranger wore practical clothing, a simple cotton shirt under a leather vest, worn denim trousers, and dusty boots. A cowboy hat shaded eyes that were fixed firmly on Wilson with unmistakable warning. "This doesn't concern you, Mitchell," Wilson spat, his friendly demeanor evaporating instantly. "I believe it does," the cowboy replied, positioning himself between Winifred and Wilson. "Since I'm here on Frederick Sullivan's behalf." Winifred's confusion mounted as she looked between the two men. The cowboy turned slightly toward her, tipping his hat. "Ethan Mitchell, madam. Mr. Sullivan sent me specifically to escort you safely to town. He's been taken ill but is recovering well." Wilson's face darkened. "You have no right to interfere, Mitchell." "This woman is expected at my establishment." "Your establishment?" Winifred echoed, alarm growing. Ethan's expression remained calm, but his eyes were hard as steel. "Mr. Wilson here runs the Silver Bell Saloon, Miss Edwards. And I suspect his intentions weren't to take you to Frederick Sullivan." Horrified understanding dawned on Winifred as she realized what might have happened had this cowboy not intervened. The blood drained from her face. Wilson cursed under his breath. "The woman signed a contract. She owes passage money." "That's a lie," Ethan countered evenly, "and you know it." He turned to Winifred. "Miss Edwards, I can take you directly to Dr. Winter's place where Frederick is recovering, or to the hotel if you prefer to rest after your journey." Wilson took a threatening step forward, but froze when Ethan's hand moved subtly toward the gun holstered at his hip. For a moment, tension crackled between them like lightning before a storm. "This isn't over, Mitchell," Wilson finally growled before turning on his heel and stalking away. Only when Wilson had disappeared from sight did Ethan fully relax. He turned to Winifred, his expression softening. "I apologize for that unpleasantness, Miss Edwards. Silver Creek is generally a peaceful town despite certain elements." Winifred was still trying to process what had just transpired. "You said Mr. Sullivan is ill?" "Yes, madam. Took down with a bad fever 3 days ago. He was mighty distressed about not meeting your train as promised. Asked me personally to make sure you arrived safely." Winifred studied the man before her. Ethan Mitchell was nothing like Frederick Sullivan's photograph. Where Frederick appeared scholarly and refined, this man was all frontier ruggedness, sun-bronzed skin, strong jawline covered with a day's stubble, and eyes the color of a summer storm. He was younger than Frederick, too, perhaps 30 to Frederick's 45 years. "How do I know you're telling the truth?" she asked, caution overtaking her relief. A smile tugged at the corner of Ethan's mouth, revealing a surprising dimple in his right cheek. "Smart question, madam. You described in your letters wearing a blue dress with white lace collar for the journey and carrying your mother's cameo pin." His eyes briefly flickered to the brooch at her throat. "Frederick mentioned those details, so I'd recognize you." The tension in Winifred's shoulders eased slightly. Those were indeed details she had shared in her correspondence. "Where will you take me now?" she asked. "That's your choice. The doctor's to see Frederick, the hotel to rest, or I can show you to Frederick's house where you'll be staying after the wedding." Winifred considered her options. Her propriety demanded she should go to the hotel until her fiancé recovered, but curiosity about her future home won out. "I would like to see the house first, if it's not too much trouble. Then perhaps visit Mr. Sullivan afterward." Ethan nodded, gesturing toward a wagon parked nearby. "Your luggage, madam. The trunk in the baggage car is mine as well." After retrieving her trunk, Ethan helped Winifred into the wagon with a gentle steadiness that conveyed both strength and respect. As they pulled away from the station, Winifred stole glances at her rescuer, wondering what connection he had to her fiancé. "Mr. Mitchell, may I ask how you know Mr. Sullivan?" Ethan clicked his tongue, encouraging the horses forward. "Known Frederick most of my life. My father worked cattle for his father back when the Sullivans ran one of the biggest spreads in the territory." "But Mr. Sullivan is a merchant now, correct?" "Yes, madam. After his father died, Frederick sold most of the ranch land and opened the general store. More suited to his temperament, I reckon. He was always more comfortable with ledgers than lassos." "And you're a cowboy," a small smile played on Ethan's lips. "I run a modest ranch about 5 miles outside of town, nothing grand but it's mine, worked 10 years saving enough to buy it." As they traveled, Ethan pointed out various landmarks: the church where Winifred would be married, the schoolhouse where she might find employment given her teaching background, the general store that Frederick owned. Silver Creek was larger than she'd expected, with several streets of businesses and homes spreading outward from the main thoroughfare. "It's grown considerably in recent years," Ethan explained. "The railroad changed everything. We've got nearly 800 souls now." They turned down a tree-lined street with several well-maintained houses set back from the road. Ethan pulled the wagon to a stop before a 2-story home painted white with green shutters. A wraparound porch boasted a swing and several rocking chairs. "This is Frederick's place," Ethan announced, jumping down to help her. Winifred stared at the house in surprise. It was far grander than she'd imagined from Frederick's modest descriptions. Perhaps he hadn't wanted to seem boastful in his letters. "It's lovely," she managed, allowing Ethan to assist her down from the wagon. Frederick's quite proud of it, had it built 3 years ago to his exact specifications. Ethan retrieved a key from his pocket. "He asked me to let you in, show you around. Said you might want to get your bearings before the wedding." Inside, the house was just as impressive: polished wooden floors, quality furniture, a piano in the parlor, and a kitchen with modern conveniences. Everything spoke of comfort and prosperity beyond what Winifred had dared hope for. "This will be your room," Ethan said, showing her to a spacious bedroom with a large window overlooking a garden, "at least until after the wedding. Frederick's room is across the hall." Winifred blushed at the implication of separate rooms becoming one. Ethan seemed to sense her discomfort and quickly moved on, showing her the rest of the house. "There's one more room you should see," he said, leading her to a small room at the back of the house filled with books. "Frederick thought you might like this as a reading room or study, given your interest in literature." Winifred ran her fingers over the leather-bound volumes, touched by the thoughtfulness. He remembered. "Frederick's a good man," Ethan said quietly, "honest, reliable." Something in his tone made Winifred look up sharply. But Ethan hesitated. "It's not my place to say anything about your arrangement with Frederick. Please, Mr. Mitchell. I've traveled nearly 2,000 miles to marry a man I've never met. Any insight would be appreciated." Ethan removed his hat, running a hand through hair the color of wheat. "Frederick's a good man," he repeated. "But he's practical. He needs a wife to help with his business, to maintain his home, to give him standing in the community. He'll treat you well, provide for you, respect you. But—" Winifred prompted again, sensing the unspoken reservation. Ethan's storm-gray eyes met hers directly. "But don't expect passion, Miss Edwards. Frederick's first wife died in childbirth 7 years ago. He's made it clear he's looking for a partnership, not a love match." The blunt assessment stung, though it wasn't entirely unexpected. Many mail-order marriages were practical arrangements rather than romantic unions. Still, Winifred had nursed a small hope that affection might grow between them over time. "I appreciate your candor," she said, struggling to keep disappointment from her voice. Ethan nodded, replacing his hat. "Would you like to rest here for a bit, or shall we visit Frederick at the doctor's now? I think I'd like to freshen up first, if that's acceptable." "Of course." "I'll wait downstairs." Left alone, Winifred unpacked a few essentials and washed her face and hands in the basin provided. She changed into a fresh collar and tidied her hair, trying to present a proper appearance for her first meeting with her fiancé. When she descended the stairs, she found Ethan examining a painting in the foyer. He turned at her approach, and something in his expression made her heart flutter unexpectedly. "Ready, Miss Edwards." The doctor's home was on the other side of town, a modest building with a shingle identifying it as the office of Dr. Samuel Winters. Ethan escorted Winifred inside, where they were greeted by a kindly older man with spectacles perched on his nose. "Ah, you must be Miss Edwards," the doctor said warmly. "Frederick's been asking after you all day. He's much improved, though still weak." "Is it safe for me to see him?" Winifred asked, concerned. "Perfectly safe. The fever's broken and he's no longer contagious. Just don't tire him out." The doctor led them to a back room where a man lay propped up against pillows, reading a newspaper. Winifred immediately recognized him from the photograph Frederick Sullivan, looking older and thinner than his picture suggested, but unmistakably the same man. His beard was neatly trimmed, his hair graying at the temples. "Frederick," Ethan called softly. "Look who's arrived safe and sound." Frederick looked up, his expression brightening. "Miss Edwards, please forgive me for not meeting your train as promised." Winifred stepped forward, offering a tentative smile. "There's nothing to forgive, Mr. Sullivan. I understand you've been unwell. Please call me Frederick." He extended a pale hand, which she took briefly. "I hope your journey wasn't too arduous." "It was long but uneventful," she replied, not wishing to worry him with the incident at the station. Frederick glanced at Ethan. "I trust Mitchell has been taking good care of you." "Mr. Mitchell has been most helpful," Winifred confirmed. "He showed me your beautiful home." Frederick nodded approvingly. "Excellent. I hope it meets your expectations." "It exceeds them," she assured him. They conversed politely for several minutes, Frederick asking about her journey and expressing regret about his illness. "The wedding will have to be postponed until I'm fully recovered," he explained. "Perhaps 2 weeks. I hope that's not too inconvenient." "Your health is the priority," Winifred said diplomatically. "In the meantime, I've arranged for you to stay with Mrs. Patterson, our Reverend's wife." "It wouldn't be proper for you to stay alone in my home before we're married." Frederick frowned suddenly. "Unless that scoundrel Wilson caused trouble." "Ethan, you didn't mention anything about the station." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. Wilson tried to intercept Miss Edwards, claiming to be your associate. Frederick's face darkened. That despicable man, I apologize, Miss Edwards. Wilson has been trying to bring young women to work in his saloon through various deceptions. I should have warned you. Mr. Mitchell handled the situation admirably, Winifred assured him. Frederick relaxed slightly. I'm glad to hear it. Mitchell is the most reliable man I know, which is why I trusted him with this important task. He looked suddenly tired, the brief conversation having drained his limited energy. We should let you rest, Ethan suggested, noting Frederick's pallor. Yes, perhaps that would be best. Frederick turned to Winifred. I look forward to becoming better acquainted once I'm recovered, Miss Edwards. As do I, she replied, feeling strangely disconnected from this man she had agreed to marry. Their exchange had been cordial but oddly formal, lacking any hint of warmth or personal connection. Outside the doctor's office, Ethan helped Winifred back into the wagon. Mrs. Patterson is a fine woman, he assured her. You'll be comfortable in her home until the wedding. Winifred nodded, lost in thought. The reality of her situation was settling in. She was in a strange town, about to marry a man who, despite his material comforts and respectable position, felt like a complete stranger. The correspondence that had seemed so promising now felt insubstantial compared to the flesh and blood man she had just met. Are you all right, Miss Edwards? Ethan's concerned voice broke through her reverie. Yes, just tired from the journey, she replied automatically. Ethan studied her face for a moment, as if he could see through her polite facade. It's a lot to take in, he said gently. Coming to a new place, meeting your future husband for the first time. Yes, she admitted. I suppose I didn't know what to expect. Frederick's illness doesn't show him at his best, Ethan offered. He's usually more animated. Winifred appreciated the kindness behind his words. Mr. Mitchell, may I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you married? A shadow passed over Ethan's face. No, madam. Never found the right woman, I suppose, or perhaps never had enough to offer the right woman. I find that hard to believe, Winifred said before she could stop herself. A hint of color rose in Ethan's cheeks, and he quickly turned his attention to guiding the horses. Mrs. Patterson's house is just ahead. The Reverend and Mrs. Patterson welcomed Winifred warmly, fussing over her like concerned parents. After helping bring in her luggage, Ethan prepared to take his leave. Thank you for everything today, Mr. Mitchell, Winifred said sincerely. My pleasure, Miss Edwards. He hesitated, then added, I'll check on you tomorrow, make sure you're settling in all right. As Winifred watched him drive away, Mrs. Patterson commented, such a fine young man, that Ethan Mitchell, works harder than anyone in the territory. Shame about his family's misfortunes. Misfortunes? Winifred couldn't help asking. His father lost everything in a bad cattle investment, died of a heart attack soon after. Ethan's been rebuilding from nothing ever since, supporting his mother and sister too, until his sister married last year. Mrs. Patterson shook her head admiringly. Never complains, that one, just puts his shoulder to the wheel and keeps going. That night, in the comfortable guest room of the Patterson home, Winifred found herself thinking not of her future husband but of the cowboy who had come to her rescue. There was something about Ethan Mitchell that stirred her in ways Frederick Sullivan did not. A vitality, a quiet strength, an unspoken depth of character that resonated with her own spirit. The following days fell into a pattern. Each morning, Ethan would arrive to escort Winifred on errands or to visit Frederick, who was recovering slowly. In the afternoons, she would help Mrs. Patterson with household tasks or meet other women from the community who were curious about the new arrival. Each evening, she would find herself looking forward to seeing Ethan again the next day. As Frederick regained his strength, Winifred spent more time with him, getting to know the man she was to marry. He was unfailingly polite, intelligent, and considerate of her comfort. But as Ethan had warned, there was a certain reserve to Frederick, a wall he maintained even as they became better acquainted. Their conversations centered primarily on practical matters: the running of the household, the operations of the store, the social obligations they would have as a married couple. One afternoon, a week after her arrival, Winifred was helping at Frederick's store while he rested at home. A shipment of fabric had arrived, and she was organizing the bolts of cloth when Ethan entered, his tall frame filling the doorway. "Miss Edwards," he greeted her, removing his hat. "I didn't expect to find you here." "Mr. Sullivan thought I might like to familiarize myself with the store," she explained. Aware of a quickening in her pulse at his arrival, Ethan nodded, approaching the counter. "How are you finding it? It's well organized. Mr. Sullivan runs a very efficient business." "That he does." Ethan's gaze lingered on her face. "You seem to be adjusting well to Silver Creek." "The people have been very welcoming," she replied. "Mrs. Patterson has introduced me to half the town, I think." Ethan smiled, creating that disarming dimple in his cheek. "And your impressions of your future husband, now that you've had time to become acquainted?" Winifred hesitated, unsure how to express her complicated feelings. Frederick was everything he had claimed to be in his letters: respectable, established, secure. Yet something essential was missing. "Mr. Sullivan is a good man," she finally said, echoing Ethan's own words from days earlier. Understanding flickered in Ethan's eyes. But I," she trailed off, unable to articulate her doubts without seeming ungrateful or fickle. "It's all right," Ethan said softly. "You don't have to explain." Their eyes held for a long moment, communicating what words could not. Winifred was the first to look away, her cheeks warming. "Was there something you needed from the store?" she asked, desperate to change the subject. "Just some nails for a fence repair," Ethan replied, seeming equally eager to return to safer ground. As she gathered his purchase, their fingers brushed briefly, sending a jolt of awareness through her that was becoming dangerously familiar. "Will you be at the town social on Saturday?" Ethan asked as he paid for the nails. "Yes, Mr. Sullivan thought it would be a good opportunity for me to meet more people before the wedding. Save me a dance?" The question seemed to surprise Ethan as much as it did Winifred. "Aye." "That would be lovely," she managed, her heart fluttering traitorously. Ethan nodded, replaced his hat, and departed, leaving Winifred staring after him, confusion and longing warring in her heart. The Saturday social was held in the town hall, a large wooden structure that served multiple purposes for the community. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm glow over the festivities. A small band played lively tunes while couples danced, and others enjoyed refreshments along the edges of the room. Winifred arrived on Frederick's arm, wearing her best dress, a dark green silk that complemented her auburn hair. Frederick, fully recovered now though still thinner than before his illness, had insisted on attending despite not being one for dancing. "I want to show off my beautiful bride-to-be," he had explained with a paternal sort of pride that, while flattering, made Winifred feel more like a prized possession than a future wife. As they entered, Winifred immediately scanned the room for Ethan, spotting him in conversation with several ranchers near the punch bowl. He looked different tonight, cleaned up, wearing a crisp white shirt, vest, and string tie, his usually unruly hair tamed. When he caught sight of her, a smile spread across his face that made her knees weaken. Throughout the evening, Winifred dutifully stayed by Frederick's side, meeting countless townsfolk whose names blurred together. Frederick introduced her as "my fiancée, Miss Edwards, soon to be Mrs. Sullivan," with a proprietary air that grew increasingly stifling. When the band struck up a Virginia reel, Frederick urged her to participate. "Go on, my dear. I'm not much for dancing, but you should enjoy yourself." Winifred joined the line of women, and to her surprise and secret delight, found herself paired with Ethan for the dance. As they moved through the patterns of the reel, coming together and apart, their eyes locked each time they met. "You look beautiful tonight," Ethan said quietly during one such moment. "Thank you," she whispered back, aware of Frederick watching from the sidelines. After the reel ended, Ethan approached Frederick directly. "Mind if I claim the next dance with your fiancé, Sullivan?" Frederick waved his permission genially. "By all means, I'm happy to see Winifred enjoying herself." The band began a waltz, and Ethan led Winifred to the center of the floor. His hand at her waist was respectful but firm, his other hand holding hers with surprising gentleness for a man who worked with cattle and horses. "You dance well for a cowboy," she teased, trying to lighten the intensity between them. My mother insisted all her children learn. Said it was a civilized accomplishment. They moved together with an effortless synchronicity that felt both natural and miraculous. For those precious minutes, the rest of the room seemed to fade away. I've been thinking about you, Ethan admitted in a low voice. More than I should. Winifred's heart raced. Mr. Mitchell, Ethan, he corrected. Please, Ethan, she conceded, the intimacy of his given name sending a thrill through her. We shouldn't be having this conversation, I know. His eyes, stormy and conflicted, held hers. Your promise to Frederick. He's a good man who can give you security, respectability. And you? She asked before she could stop herself. Pain crossed his features. I have little to offer a woman like you, Winifred. A small ranch still heavy with mortgage, long hours of hard work, an uncertain future. The honesty of his admission touched her deeply. Yet you're telling me this now. Because I can't bear the thought of you marrying Frederick without knowing there's another choice, even if it's a foolish one. His grip tightened slightly. I've never felt this way about anyone. It sounds ridiculous, we've known each other barely 2 weeks, but there's something between us that seems. Right, she finished for him, the truth of it resonating in her bones. The music ended, forcing them to separate. Ethan bowed formally, but his eyes conveyed everything words could not. Winifred returned to Frederick's side, her mind and heart in turmoil. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur. When Frederick complained of fatigue and suggested they leave early, Winifred agreed, desperate for time alone to think. As they departed, she saw Ethan watching them, his expression unreadable. That night, sleep eluded her. She paced her room at the Pattersons, weighing her options with increasing desperation. The wedding was scheduled for the following weekend. Frederick had been nothing but kind to her. Breaking their engagement would mean scandal, possible destitution, and certain shame. Yet the thought of pledging herself to one man while her heart yearned for another felt like a betrayal of everything she believed about marriage. Morning brought no clarity. Winifred went through her day in a fog of indecision, helping Mrs. Patterson with household chores and avoiding all mention of the upcoming wedding. Late in the afternoon, a commotion in the street drew her attention. Looking out the window, she saw Ethan and Beauregard Wilson facing each other in front of the saloon, tension radiating from their rigid stances. A small crowd had gathered, sensing the potential for violence. Without thinking, Winifred rushed outside, Mrs. Patterson calling after her in alarm. By the time she reached the scene, the confrontation had escalated. You're a dead man, Mitchell, Wilson was saying, his hand hovering near his gun. You cost me a pretty penny interfering with my business. Your business is bringing misery to innocent women, Ethan replied, his voice steady despite the danger. It stops now, Wilson sneered. Because of that mail-order bride, she'll be wasted on Sullivan. Man probably doesn't even remember what to do with a woman. Ethan's face hardened. Apologize for that remark. Or what? Wilson taunted, or I'll make you regret it. Winifred pushed through the crowd just as Wilson went for his gun. Stop, she cried. Both men turned at her voice. In that split second of distraction, Wilson drew his weapon, but Ethan was faster. A single shot rang out and Wilson crumpled to the ground, clutching his shoulder. Damn you, Mitchell, he groaned. Sheriff Davis arrived moments later, quickly taking control of the situation. After hearing accounts from multiple witnesses, he arrested Wilson for attempted murder and commended Ethan for his restraint in shooting to wound rather than kill. As the crowd dispersed and Wilson was led away, Winifred approached Ethan, her heart pounding. That was foolish, she admonished, though her voice betrayed her concern. He could have killed you. Men like Wilson only understand one language, Ethan replied grimly. Besides, I couldn't let him continue threatening women like you. Like me. Women who come west looking for a better life only to be exploited. His eyes softened as they studied her face. Winifred, I need to talk to you properly, not here in the street. I can't, she said, though everything in her wanted to agree. I'm to have dinner with Frederick tonight. Tomorrow then, meet me at my ranch. I'll send directions through Mrs. Patterson. When she hesitated, he added, please, before you make a decision that will affect the rest of your life. Against her better judgment, Winifred nodded. The dinner with Frederick that evening was pleasant but strained, at least on Winifred's part. They discussed wedding preparations, the guest list, and plans for their life together, all while Winifred fought an internal battle between duty and desire. "Are you feeling well, my dear?" Frederick asked eventually, noticing her distraction. "You seem troubled." Winifred considered confessing everything but couldn't bring herself to hurt this man who had offered her a secure future. "Just wedding nerves, I suppose," she replied with a forced smile. Frederick patted her hand paternally. "Perfectly natural, but I assure you our arrangement will be beneficial for us both. You'll want for nothing as Mrs. Sullivan." "Except love," Winifred thought but did not say, the next day following the directions Mrs. Patterson had discreetly passed to her. Winifred rode out to Ethan's ranch in a borrowed buggy. The property was smaller than the grand spreads owned by some of the territory's cattle barons, but it was beautiful rolling grasslands backed by distant mountains. A modest but well-built house, sturdy outbuildings, and healthy cattle grazing in the pastures. Ethan was mending a corral fence when she arrived, his back to her as he hammered a nail into place. The sound of the buggy made him turn, and the smile that lit his face at the sight of her erased any lingering doubts from Winifred's mind. He approached, wiping his hands on a kerchief. "You came," he said simply, as if he'd half expected her to change her mind. "I came," she confirmed, allowing him to help her down from the buggy. They walked together toward the house, an awkward tension between them now that the moment for truth had arrived. "It's not much," Ethan said apologetically, gesturing to his home. "Nothing like what Frederick can offer you." "It's lovely," Winifred replied honestly. "You've built something to be proud of here." They settled on the porch where Ethan had prepared coffee. For a moment they sipped in silence, the vastness of the prairie spread before them. "I need to know," Ethan finally said, his voice rough with emotion. "Is there any chance for us, Winifred, or am I making a fool of myself?" Winifred set down her cup, her hands trembling slightly. "You're not a fool, Ethan. These past 2 weeks, I've felt more alive, more seen than I have in years, perhaps ever." Hope kindled in his eyes. "But Frederick is a good man who deserves honesty." She took a deep breath. "I came here today to tell you that I can't marry Frederick knowing how I feel about you. It wouldn't be fair to any of us." Ethan's expression transformed with joyous disbelief. "Winifred, are you certain? Life with me won't be easy. There will be hard times, long days of work, sacrifices." "I'm not afraid of hard work or sacrifice," she replied, smiling through sudden tears. "I'm only afraid of a lifetime without love." Ethan reached for her hands, holding them in his calloused ones. "I love you, Winifred Edwards. I know it's fast and maybe foolish, but I've never been more certain of anything." "I love you too," she whispered, the truth of it warming her from within. He leaned forward, and their lips met in a kiss that felt like coming home, tender at first, then deepening with shared passion and promise. When they finally parted, both were breathless. "I need to speak with Frederick," Winifred said, resting her forehead against Ethan's. "He deserves to hear this from me directly." "We'll go together," Ethan decided. "He's been my friend for years. I won't hide from this." The confrontation with Frederick was difficult but ultimately more compassionate than either had expected. After his initial shock and disappointment, Frederick surprised them with his understanding. "I've seen the way you look at each other," he admitted ruefully. "It reminds me of how I once looked at my Catherine before I lost her." He sighed heavily. "I thought I could be content with a marriage of convenience, but perhaps that would have been unfair to both of us, Winifred." "I'm sorry," she said sincerely. "Don't be. Better to discover this now than after vows have been exchanged." He turned to Ethan. "You're a lucky man, Mitchell. Don't squander it." "I won't," Ethan promised solemnly. 3 months later, Winifred and Ethan were married in a simple ceremony in the town church. Mrs. Patterson had helped Winifred create a wedding dress from cream-colored silk, ordered specially from Frederick's store, his wedding gift to them, along with his blessing. As they exchanged vows, Winifred thought back to that fateful day at the train station when a mail-order bride meant for one man had found her heart's true destination in another. Ethan's eyes held hers as he promised to love, honor, and cherish her for all their days, his voice unwavering in its sincerity. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the Reverend declared. "You may kiss your bride." Ethan's kiss was a pledge, A promise of the life they would build together, a life that might not be easy or luxurious, but would be rich in the ways that truly mattered. That evening, in the privacy of their home, Ethan held Winifred close as they stood on the porch watching the sunset paint the prairie in shades of gold and crimson. "Any regrets, Mrs. Mitchell?" he asked, pressing a kiss to her temple. Winifred turned in his arms, looking up at the man who had claimed her heart by first respecting her choice. "Not one," she answered truthfully. "This is exactly where I'm meant to be." As the stars began to appear in the vast Montana sky, Winifred and Ethan Mitchell stepped into their home, and their future together, a future born from a chance encounter, and the courage to follow their hearts against all convention. In the wilds of the American frontier, they had found not just survival, but the promise of a love as boundless as the prairie itself.